Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Burdick, the reading coach. I am here with another reading selection today. We are going to read A Chair for My Mother by Vera B. Williams. Now, before we read though, I want us to think about before reading questions, during reading questions, and after reading questions. Because if we can either think about some questions before, during, and after, and we formulate those questions before, during, and after we read, it really helps us to have a better understanding of what we've read. And what's really great is that you can create the questions, or maybe you have an adult in your house that wants to create the questions. And the questions can be the same over lots of books that you read, or maybe you change it up a bit. Now, for our book today, I have chosen one question from each of my columns here, before, during, and after. So let's think about that before question that I chose. What does the title tell me? Well, let's take a look. So the title is A Chair for My Mother. So I am thinking a chair is important, and one of the characters is going to be the mom or the mother. Now, I also want to look at the illustrations on that front cover. I have a little girl here, and she is looking in a window, and it looks like maybe it's a restaurant or a diner. Now, I want you to think every time that you start a book or someone reads something to you or you read it yourself, you think about what that title is telling you. Now, I'm going to go ahead and share the other questions so that we can ponder them as I read today. So as I read, I want you to think about things that you might be curious about, but my question is I'm curious about. So as I read, I'm going to be thinking about what am I curious about during this story? And then at the very end, I want us to answer, what was the main idea? All right, let's get started. This is A Chair for My Mother by Vera B. Williams. Mama works as a waitress in the blue tile diner. After school, sometimes I go to meet her there. Then her boss, Josephine, gives me a job too. I wash the salts and peppers and fill the ketchups. One time I peeled all the onions for the onion soup. When I finish, Josephine says, "Good work, honey," and she pays me. And every time I put half of my money into the jar. Now I'm thinking about my question. I am curious about that jar. Let's read on to see if we find more about it. It takes a long time to fill a jar this big. Every day when my mother comes home from work, I take down the jar. My mama empties all of her change from tips out of her purse for me to count. Then we push all of the coins into the jar. Sometimes my mama is laughing when she comes home from work. Sometimes she's so tired she falls asleep while I count the money out into piles. Some days she has lots of tips. Some days she only has a little. Then she looks worried. But each evening, every single shiny coin goes into that jar. We sit at the kitchen to count the tips. Usually, Grandma is with us too. While we count, she likes to hum. Often, she has money in her old leather wallet for us. Whenever she gets a good bargain on tomatoes or bananas or something she buys, she puts by the savings and they go into the jar. When we can't get a single other coin into the jar, we are going to take out all of the money and go buy a chair. Yes, a chair, a wonderful, beautiful, fat, soft armchair. We will get one covered in velvet with roses all over it. We are going to get the best chair in the whole world. That is because our old chairs burned up. There was a big fire in our other house. All of our chairs burned. So did our sofa, and so did everything else. That wasn't such a long time ago. My mother and I were coming home from buying new shoes. I had new sandals. She had new pumps. We were walking to our house from the bus. We were looking at everyone's tulips. She was saying that she liked red tulips. I was saying I liked yellow ones. Then we came to our block. Right outside our house stood two big fire engines. I could see lots of smoke. Tall orange flames came out of the roof. All of our neighbors stood in a bunch across the street. Mama grabbed my hand and we ran. My Uncle Sandy saw us and ran to us. Mama yelled, "Where's Mother?" And I yelled, "Where's my grandma?" My Aunt Ida waved and shouted, "She's here, she's here. She's okay, don't worry." Grandma was all right. Our cat was safe too, even though it took a while to find her. But everything else in our whole house was spoiled. That, or what was left of our house, was turned to charcoal and ashes. We went to stay with my mother's sister, Aunt Ida and Uncle Sandy. Then we were able to move into the apartment downstairs. We painted the walls yellow. The floors were all shiny, but the rooms were very empty. The first day we moved in, the neighbors brought pizza and cake and ice cream, and they brought lots of other things too. The family across the street brought a table and 3 kitchen chairs. The very old man next door gave us a bed from when his children were little. My other grandpa brought us his beautiful rug. My mother's other sister, Sally, had made us red and white curtains. Mama's boss, Josephine, brought pots and pans, silverware and dishes. My cousin brought her own stuffed bear. Everyone clapped when my grandma made a speech. "You are all the kindest people," she said, "and we thank you very much. It's lucky we're young and we can start over." That was last year, but we still have no sofa and no big chairs. When Mama comes home, her feet hurt. "There's no good place for me to take a load off my feet," she says. When Grandma wants to sit back and hum and cut up potatoes, she has to get as comfortable as she can on a hard kitchen chair. So that's how come Mama brought home the biggest jar she could find at the diner, and all of the coins started going into that jar. Now the jar is too heavy for me to lift down. Uncle Sandy gave me a quarter. He had to lift me up so I could put it in. After supper, Mama and Grandma and I stood in front of the jar. "Well, I never would have believed it, but I guess it's full," Mama said. My mother brought home little paper wrappers for the nickels and the dimes and the quarters. I counted them all and wrapped them all up. On my Mother's Day off, we took all the coins to the bank. The bank exchanged them for $10 bills. Then we took the bus downtown to shop for a chair. We shopped through 4 furniture stores. We tried out big chairs and little chairs, soft chairs and hard chairs. Grandma said she felt like Goldilocks and the 3 bears trying out all of those chairs. Finally, we found the chair we were all dreaming of, and the money in the jar was enough to pay for it. We called Aunt Ida and Uncle Sandy. They came right down in their pickup truck to drive the chair home for us. They knew we couldn't wait for it to be delivered. I tried out our chair in the back of the truck. Mama wouldn't let me ride back there while we drove, but they let me sit in it all while they carried it up to the door. We sat on the chair right beside the window with the red and white curtains. Grandma, Mama, and I all sat in it while Aunt Ida took our picture. Now Grandma sits in it and talks with people going by in the daytime. Mama sits down and watches the news on TV when she comes home from her job. After supper, I sit with her, and she can reach right up and turn out the light if I fall asleep in her lap. I hope you enjoyed our selection today, A Chair for My Mother by Vera B. Williams. Now, let's review that last question that we were thinking of. What was the main idea? Can you turn to a brother or sister or cousin or maybe the adult in your house and tell them, what was the main idea of A Chair for My Mother by Vera B. Williams? Boys and girls, thank you for joining me for another Read Aloud today. Remember, stay safe, be kind, and this is Mrs. Burdick out.